All right, everyone, we are live. Welcome to this kind of last minute, very epic stream. I'm going to be on here with Left Right, who is a very epic YouTuber. He does stuff with elections a lot, and he has great content. I'll link him in the description and pinned comment. If you're not already subscribed, which I think most of you probably are, but if you're not, then go subscribe to him because he's epic. And for those of you who do not know,
Yes.
he, despite his profile picture saying otherwise, he is a moderate, to center left Democrat. He's a Democrat, but he's pretty moderate on most issues. And we've been talking in group chat GCs and stuff on Twitter, and he is considering joining the. Well, I don't know if he's considering joining the GOP, but he's considering at least becoming more Republican leaning. And so the stream is just kind of for us to talk about why I personally think he should do that and kind of for just kind of get a feel about why he might do that. So you want to go first? Like kind of like
Yeah.
explain yourself, explain your position.
So pretty much, I'm an economic liberal. Like I'm not fiscally conservative, but I'm pretty socially, I guess, conservative for a Democrat. Um, I do not support things like gay marriage, and except for situations where it's for health of a mother, or rape or incest, I do support a ban on abortions. It's pretty much what it is.
What are your thoughts on marijuana? That's another just social issue. I like to hear people's takes on.
If it's for health, I'll support it. Other than that, no.
Oh, so you support keeping it illegal unless it's for medical purposes?
Yes.
Okay, okay. What about like do you support criminalizing it like it is now, or do you want to decriminalize it? Because like right
I
now in some
s-
states, it's like considered a criminal offense. You go to jail for a
yeah.
really long time, even just for possession. So there's people saying that we should decriminalize it, so it's still illegal, but like the charges are less.
Yeah, like I went to Colorado and I saw a lot of marijuana stores and stuff because it's legal.
Yeah.
But here in Texas, it's illegal to
Hmm.
have it on you. Um,
Yeah. Do you support like decriminalizing it though, or do you think it should be a criminal offense?
I think in unless it's some very weird circumstance, it should be criminalized.
Okay. Like, because my personal take is I think if you just have a little bit on you, I don't think that should be a criminal offense. I think if you sell it, you should go to jail for a long time. But I think just having it on you shouldn't just automatically be a criminal offense. I'm
Yeah, I
just curious
think
what your thoughts
like
are because it's kind of a hot issue.
if you use it for yourself or whatever, I can be okay with that because personally that doesn't it's not my business.
Yeah.
However, if you like start selling it, that's kind of like with a lot of issues. If it's not your business, it kind of changes your opinion on things. It like if you sell it, I don't like that. But if you just use it for yourself, it's fine.
So you have more of like a libertarian point of view, I guess you could say. Like, you do
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, you do you. That's not my business. But once you start making it public, then that's where I'm against it.
Okay, fair enough. So what is like I guess the main issue that you have with the like current Republican Party? Like why like what's the one thing like if there is a one thing that makes you say, "Yeah, no, I don't like that."
It's kind of like it's not even like the party as a whole per se. Like I'll just like won't vote for certain wings of the party or like the very extremist wings.
What would you consider
Like
an extremist wing?
maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene esque people like that.
What's extreme about her? I'm just curious.
I don't know, her kind of like rhetoric on the 2020 election.
Okay, I can see what you're saying because I'm not going to get into that on a live
Like
stream, but
Trump had every right to challenge the results. I'll give him that. But like people who are talking about it and 2020, it's 2022 and
yeah,
doing
but it
all
is a
these
rallying cry for the
audits.
base, and there are a possibility of Democrats enact those same policies in the midterm. So it's not like they're just saying it to say it. There actually is some validation to what in valid criticism. Because if you look, I think it's Pennsylvania. They're trying to implement the same voter laws they had in 2020, which isn't which is not good at all. So I think that
So
it is worth putting up a fight.
So like I actually saw this one thing in my YouTube comments. It was like, okay, so Florida how they start counting ballots like way before,
Yeah.
and they count them really fast. They're like, every state should be like that. Well, I was like, we don't really have a national standard for voting
No, I
laws.
don't think we should nationalize elections, though, in
Like,
my opinion.
it's up to the state,
Yeah, well,
but
no, the thing
like
is, a
if
lot of
it's
states that they don't have a good process of doing it. That's the problem across a lot of
like
states.
Pennsylvania didn't count its mail-in vote till election day, if I recall,
No, I
and
don't.
that's the
Yeah, I don't
same
know.
thing.
Pennsylvania had really weird
That's
regulations
the
and
same
laws.
thing with Michigan.
Yeah, I know Michigan and Pennsylvania both had. I don't know the exact like laws, but they both had really weird, I guess, regulations or whatever, however you want to put it, for the 2020 election.
And it
But the
was
thing is, you
like,
say you don't like the rhetoric on the 2020 election. You say, oh, you don't like that, but the same that we agree that the laws in 2020 in states like Pennsylvania and
the
Michigan were bad and didn't
the
work.
laws were pretty strange. That
Yeah, the
kept me
laws and
on
the way that they
the
counted the
edge of
votes are
my
pretty
seat.
strange.
I
Correct.
was
We
like,
agree on that.
why is this taking so long? Um, like Georgia
Yeah, Georgia's another one.
was
So we
strange.
agreed that all these states, whether it be Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, all three of them, and probably others, like, I don't know,
Yeah,
Arizona, maybe Nevada, Wisconsin, all of the voting laws that they had in 2020 were definitely should be changed, right?
yeah. I
Okay.
think they should make it okay. So we all agree we want to make it easier to vote but harder to cheat.
Yeah. But the thing is, MTG's the actual policy she's like proposing, that's what that does. Like
Yeah,
mandatory
like
voter ID,
on
things like that.
policy,
Yeah.
I agree with a lot of the stuff. Actually, it's just the way they go about it. Like,
Like how?
let's say it's like writing a story. It's like in a very calm tone, right? Let's say. But then you're doing it in front of your class and you're like very aggressive and stuff.
Well, it's sometimes the
That's
way that you have to do it. If no one will listen to you if you don't. MTG, she's
true.
a freshman in Congress. She doesn't have a whole lot of sway. That's kind of she's only really well known because she's put herself out there and been very loud, I guess you could say.
True.
And because of that,
Yeah,
it's gotten a lot of her policies into the mainstream and stuff she's got stuff done. So,
sure. Also, this the thing with the FBI raid or whatever that was, if there's so a lot of people are saying the FBI is a partisan institution, which I guess technically it is,
is.
based off of which party. Like, let's
Yeah,
say they
I understand.
investigated Hunter Biden, right? He's really shady. I'd support that if there's actual evidence. Like, if there's
Yeah.
actual evidence that Trump did something, like, I'm not jumping on board with this exactly yet. Like, but if there's actually evidence that he violated the Espionage Act, that only ruins his credibility even further for me. Like, right now, I'm kind of anti Biden, really.
But
It's
I'm guessing
like,
you're also anti Trump.
I mean, not as much as I was in January of 2021,
Yeah.
but that's also when I was a socialist.
Yeah, I was a DeSantis bro, January 2021. No, I was a libertarian actually. So you were a
Left,
socialist. I was a
left,
libertarian in
right
January.
is already a Republican. No, I'm not a
Wyatt
Republican.
Tomlin fan. I think that's a
He
troll
did
account.
not. If there's evidence that he did, I'm not saying that he did yet. If there's like actual proof, and I want to see it, if there's actual proof that he did, then I'll support the raid. But I
What
really
would you
don't right
consider,
now.
I guess, what would you consider like actual proof? Like, how do you know that they
Like,
didn't plant it there or frame him? Because I'm not saying that they did, and I'm not saying they didn't. I'm not saying they're not going to, and I'm not saying they are. You know what I mean? I'm not implying anything. I'm just asking, like, is there any specific proof or like fact that you would like to see to know that
maybe,
yeah, he actually did that and that it wasn't planted or anything like that?
I think the best way to solve these issues are bipartisan commissions to figure out if they really did do these things. Like,
I would agree in an ideal world, but that just isn't the
that's just
case.
not going to happen.
The
But
uniparty the uniparty hates Trump. So even if you did create some sort of bipartisan commission with all sides,
you're gonna get Cheney Republicans on there instead.
yeah. So that's the thing is that well I guess in an ideal world I would support that. It's just not going to happen.
So
So
like I guess there's really not a true way to tell. I guess if he really did it or not, but like I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it, but there's kind of s- comes to a point where like you can kind of tell
It would
if
just
it's
depend
fake
on
or
like what they
not.
say he did.
Like if you can't make it sound too unbelievable if you're trying to fake it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Like
So it would
I
just
don't
kind of
think the
depend on what it would
FBI are
actually be.
that stupid. Like they're pretty stupid, but I don't think and Garland's pretty stupid as well, but I don't think they're gonna make it really obvious if there's nothing there. I don't think they would do
Yeah,
that.
I don't know about that, but I get what you're saying. Is there any like I don't know. Is there any Republican you would like to see run for president? Like if there is any, is there any Republican that if they ran you would support them?
At this point, I probably support people like DeSantis and you know, people like that. Pretty much, um, that's really kind of it. Like people who can, appeal to the Trump base, but aren't exactly as controversial. Like, I mean, pretty much everybody who supports Trump is controversial, but DeSantis isn't near as much controversial as Trump is.
Why do you
When he
think that
comes,
is? Do you think it's because like his rhetoric or his policies are
it's
different,
probably
or do you think
like
maybe it's because he's
okay,
more of an insider?
he's not as charismatic. I'll give Trump that. He's really charismatic. However, I think that also comes at a cost, right? Like sometimes you'll slip up, sometimes you'll say something that you weren't supposed to, or it'll sink your campaign. DeSantis really hasn't done that I can think of. I don't know. He's pretty strong electorally as well. I mean, he's making huge inroads with the Hispanic community in Florida, South Florida, you know,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
messaging. Also, Trump did really well on messaging for Hispanics. I'll also give him that. Down in South Texas, they have it shifted to the right a lot. That was kind of a
oh yeah,
big
yeah,
victory
the
for
shifts
him.
are crazy.
It's pretty big for him, and also in Miami-Dade. Um, I think if you try to shift the Hispanic base, it's obviously going to be in the more not college educated Hispanics because
Correct. He's gonna be working class Hispanics.
college educated Hispanics still break heavily for the Democrats.
Yeah, that's not gonna change anytime
That's
soon.
just most voter groups.
Yeah,
Like, college educated whites go for the Democrats while the uneducated, college educated ones um, went for Trump heavily.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I guess you said earlier that you like DeSantis because you think he's like an electoral juggernaut, and that's something that's been said by a lot of people all over like the media and online. And I did used to think that, but I've looked more like kind of into it, and I really don't think he is. I don't think DeSantis would be able to win any states in the Rust Belt besides Iowa and Ohio, which are pretty much solid Republican anyways.
You
And
think so?
even if he did win across the Sun Belt, he would still lose without making inroads in the Rust Belt. Because when DeSantis was in Congress, he was actually a pretty pro free trade and interventionist congressman. So I don't think that would appeal very well in the Rust Belt. So I think
I mean,
electorally, Trump is actually probably better than DeSantis because Trump can still win in the Sun Belt. It won't be when he probably won't win by his large margins, but he can still win, and he also has plenty of appeal in the Midwest.
I think unless it's like DeSantis would sweep the Rust Belt if there's a trash Democratic nominee like Kamala Harris. Um, like I don't think at this point Trump. I think Trump is the only Republican. Is Trump is the only Republican unless it's DeSantis v. Harris that can carry Michigan, and that's saying a lot because Michigan is pretty,
Yeah.
pro protectionist, populist, things like that. So I think DeSantis is, definitely more of a Sunbelt dude.
Oh yeah, definitely. He would.
And
I think he
like
would probably win back the Sun Belt and do.
people
I don't
will
think he'd
like
win New Mexico, but I think he'd do decently there.
people keep saying on Twitter that a DeSantis Youngkin ticket would be unbeatable. I actually don't think so because here's the thing: if Democrats run a Rust Belt governor and a Sun Belt governor, they'd actually stand a pretty decent shot because a DeSantis Youngkin ticket would have no appeal in the Rust Belt. But that's
Exactly.
just me. Like, let's say even somebody like a meme candidate like Pritzker would have way more. I know it sounds funny, but he would have way more appeal than DeSantis in the Rust Belt, simply because
That's probably true, actually.
he knows how to win. Like Chicago suburbs are pretty close to most of the Detroit suburbs except for Macomb County and Philadelphia suburbs. Wisconsin might be out of reach, like because
Wisconsin's the most conservative of the bunch, so yeah.
the rules actually outnumber the cities in Wisconsin, so that's what makes it hard. But in Michigan and Pennsylvania, the suburbs are shifting left. The cities are losing population, but the suburbs are shifting left. If like DeSantis would have a tough time, people keep saying he'd get as much. Like a lot of Trump supporters would vote him over a Democrat. Of course they would, but a lot of them would also just stay home because DeSantis just isn't that appealing to the Rust Belt.
Yeah.
Suburbs are shifting left in Michigan. True, but Grand Rapids is like, or Oakland County is it? I think it's shifting right, but like slowly shifting right. It's not like a big shift. And like the Grand Rapids metro area. I mean, you see that with that new congressional seat in Grand Rapids, it's shifting left heavily. That's also a thing. So like it
True.
depends. Like DeSantis would obviously win, but like by the time 2024 comes around, I'm not too sure he'll be as electorally strong as people claim he is.
Yeah, because COVID, I don't think is going to be as big of an issue in
Like,
future
okay,
elections.
people like him because of COVID. Well, COVID was 2020.
Yeah,
Maybe
when you actually
some
look at
of
the core
the
issues, he's about average.
maybe some of this year, but after that, no.
So let's go back,
What's
kind of get back on topic for a second. Talk about, you know, why you might become a Republican. I'm confused. What's like keeping you from just being a Republican? Because based off of talking, you seem pretty much in line with the core of the party.
well, one I well like okay, so it's really just economic issues like things like taxation and regulations. Like that's where I defer the most.
What
Really,
about regulations
Uh,
specific? Don't you like?
regulations. I feel like on people like on corporations, they're not regulated. I feel like governments shouldn't just outright regulate companies. I
It
don't
should or it
believe
shouldn't.
it. It shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Well,
But
is that like the mainstream Republican view? It should not regulate companies.
I feel like at least for me, Democrats on regulations just appeal more because corporate like most politicians do take corporate money from both sides and corporates exploit third world countries like countries in Africa. Most people know this. Like Microsoft and Bill Gates, they take a lot of stuff from Africa because they
Yeah,
have a
that's
lot of
true.
natural resources. And they barely pay anything in taxes. I mean, you saw Amazon paid $0 in taxes. I mean, that's not okay.
Well, that's through loopholes. It's not. That's not
Yeah,
the actually. If
we
you look at
need
the
a
actual tax code itself, millionaires, billionaires, and the large corporations on paper are paying like 60% of all taxes, far more than the middle and lower classes. It's just through loopholes that were implemented in the Bush and Obama administrations. Mostly Bush, but Obama had some too. It gave them loopholes. Like for example, like you donated to charity, or if you had like a certain amount of like positions filled or something. I'm not sure the exact like terminology. We know what I mean. A bunch of random loopholes that you would
yeah.
basically pay next to nothing. So I support closing those loopholes, and more Republicans do as well. I like some of the I guess you'd say new right Republicans do support removing those regulations and fixing the tax code so that people will pay their fair share.
Yeah, we need to end that. We need to get rid of the tax loophole. That's one thing that's screwing us over. Um, like through the loopholes, I mean, my grandma, who's retired, paid more than Amazon, a billionaire company, and
Yeah.
I just don't think that's okay.
No, I agree. It's not.
And it's
Amazon should be
like
paying a lot of money in taxes.
also on things like the environment. Like I'm all open for like drilling and stuff like off the coast, domestic drilling just to
Yeah.
get gas prices down. But I mean, it also like I don't know, it's like I also want like a lot of people, not saying all Republicans, but a lot of them I've seen just want zero regulations. Um like I want regulations but like or environment regulations on energy and stuff like coal and like fossil fuels overall.
Yeah.
But I think we should focus that towards the near future. Like I don't want people, like Biden and McConnell screwing us over. I mean, we're not even adults yet, and they're gonna be gone pretty soon, and so they don't really have to worry about that. So I think we
What do you
should
mean, like
focus.
climate change? Or
Yeah, climate change.
I
They're
don't
not
know.
gonna.
Climate change, I think, is kind of a cope, in my opinion. They've been saying that the world's going to end since the 1960s. If you actually look at like the decades in the 1960s, there were all these climate protests because they said they were going to run out of oil in 10 years. In the 1970s, they said there was going to be like all the crops were going to die because we used too much pesticides, and there were massive climate and global warming protests. If you go to the 1980s, they said it was actually going to be too cold. They said that the Earth was freezing up, and there were massive climate protests and rallies, and that was actually when bills started to get passed. Reagan passed a lot of pro-environment stuff, and there were a lot of stuff that happened there. In the 1990s, they said that there was going to be like acid rain because of some, and like it was going to
Yeah,
basically mess up the climate of the world. And then obviously since the 2000s, we've had global warming and climate change. So I've kind of fallen off that sort of, I guess, bandwagon. I think we need to protect the environment, but when you really look at it, there has been like a dozen different movements since the 1960s that have said, "Oh, if we don't do this, then we're going to die," and because of the environment, and that's just not true. So I do think we need to protect the environment. I think that's conservation is inherently conservative. It's just not a huge, I guess, issue, and I don't think we should take drastic measures, especially when it comes to fossil fuels, because we don't have the technology yet to really deal with that. Our economy runs on fossil fuels, so to just throw that all away in favor of electric vehicles makes no sense to me.
yeah. No, I think we need to cut like obviously this decade we're probably not going to just switch over to electric vehicles. I think we can make ourselves energy independent again, but it's a process. Like you don't just rush it like how some Democrats in Congress are trying to do. You spend a little bit of money each year on things like solar panels while also keeping up fossil fuels so once they run out, by the time they run out, we'll be fine.
What are your thoughts on
That's just
clean coal and the like? There's this technology in Japan, and I think we have it here too. Where basically they can use coal and actually like trash, like you can burn landfills, and they can translate that into clean energy.
yeah, I've
Would you
seen
like
that.
support
That's
investing in that?
I think look, okay, so we should invest in better energy sources, but we should do a little small amount in each one, not just put a lot of money into one big one. Just so we can be safe.
What do you mean by that? Like you want to spend
Like
it in different sectors?
like let's say we spend it all on clean coal, right?
Yeah.
But then that fails. Okay, we're screwed.
So yes, you just want to spend the money on different sectors.
Yeah, you spend it a
Yeah, but that's
small
all the
amount.
money mostly spent by Democrats in the environment, pro-environment bill. It's pretty much all going to solar panels and wind. They're not investing at all in clean coal or nuclear energy, which are probably the two biggest things that, if there is a
Nuclear
climate
is actually
crisis, that will
pretty
save us.
good
Yeah, no,
as well, actually.
nuclear energy is incredible.
So that's also like, that's also really good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's so you agree we should invest in nuclear and kind of, we should invest in some environmental stuff, but, not go all in, correct?
Yes, I think it's better to put. It's like stocks. You don't put all your money into just one stock. You spend a little bit in each place and let it grow over time.
Yeah. Well, what if I told you that's basically like the mainstream conservative position, like what you
Well,
just
then I
said?
guess I'm conservative on that issue. Then
Like the average Republican is pretty much
I
that's
mean,
their stance.
I don't
So
really care about left or right. That's just my opinion. Now that might go under one or the
I know
other
I'm not saying,
category,
yeah, I know I'm
but
saying
like you
that,
know,
the whole thing is to convince you to become a Republican, and if your ideals tend to align with that, then it makes sense. And I'm just saying that when it comes to the environment, you and me sound like we pretty much completely agree, and I pretty much have the mainstream, a little bit more populist, I guess, new right, but pretty much the mainstream Republican view on the environment. So, as
yeah,
you do
I
too.
think we need to invest in better energy sources. However, you do it, let's say, over a span of 10 to 20 years. So
Yeah,
that way we don't ruin our gas prices and stuff like that.
even 10
But
to
at
20
this,
years might be a little bit aggressive. If you look at like the 2030 plan that the UN has, it's already caused chaos in Europe because they're implementing it 10 years. It's too quick to transition away. So I used to think that as well. But like if you look at Europe, have you heard about the protests in the Netherlands and
yeah.
Germany? Yeah, that was because of the UN and I think World Economic Forum. They have the 2030 plan for climate change, and that's even going too fast. So and
Mhm.
probably more like 20, 30 years.
Yeah, more like Congress makes a deadline 20 to 40 years, anywhere in between. And we keep fossil fuels going, invest in nuclear energy, but also invest in things like wind and stuff and solar panels because those are still important, but we just not fully transitioned to that because
Yeah,
oil's still a big part, you know. And
yeah,
like
definitely.
not every inflation's at 8.5% rate. The economy is doing all right, but it's not the best. It's not in the best shape. I don't think Americans are going to buy a $60,000 electric car. I don't think that's really feasible right now.
No, my family couldn't afford that.
You see, my parents could, but it's just be a waste of money.
Yeah,
That even then, like you could buy a $10,000 to $20,000 car, run it on gas, and the government is actually you save money, and the government keeps fossil fuels running, but while also spending time making these, I guess, this energy program where it invests each year a certain amount of money into different energy sources. So by that time, we'll not only be energy independent, but once fossil fuels run out, we'll be okay.
yeah,
And
I
then
pretty
you can
much agree
also
with you
make
on that.
vehicles that adapt to these new energy sources or whatever it is. Like you don't have to get rid of you don't have to go to straight to electric cars. You can make that a process as well. Everything has a process and a place and a time. And I feel that these energy sources have a time in 20, 30 years when they're actually going to be need used. This oil stuff has been around, the oil boom 1901, even earlier than that. It's been around for a few hundred years. I don't think it's just going to run out now. But we have to prepare for when it runs out so that way when it actually does, we'll be fine.
Yeah, I've read some estimates that say we have roughly, I think it's 200 years left of oil reserves, I
And if we want to
believe.
make it better off for our children and their children when when oil actually runs out, then that way, a few hundred years in advance, we already made a plan, so we will be fine.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. But like I said, that I think the 10, 20-year goal is very ambitious and just unnecessary because we likely have
Okay, yeah,
more
we're
than
not going to be
200
there
years.
in 10 years. I
Yeah, I know.
think 20 to 30, when
Yeah.
we're older, is more feasible and realistic.
Yeah, I would agree. So
But
basically,
that's just my
you
take.
have from talking to you, it seems like you have basically your view on the environment is basically what the generic Republican outlook is. So, and I share that as well. I'm actually probably a little bit more pro environment than the average Republican.
Interesting.
What's another issue, I guess, that you have with the GOP?
Um, I guess things like okay, so like the like with election fraud and stuff, I guess like we all want to make it easier to vote but harder to cheat. But the way that both parties are going about it, I just don't think is like correct per se. Like I think each party is doing one job and they're not both trying to do both jobs. Like they say they are, but I just don't see that. Like Democrats are making it really easy to vote, but also really easy to know. Like I've seen some people say like they're it's like a meme on Twitter. Like you drop 100,000 votes in a drop box in Atlanta for Raphael Warnock. That actually can happen. It's strange that it is that it actually can happen. So I don't think you should have more ballot drop boxes. But depending on the state, I mean, depending on the city, you can rough out an estimate. You can have an estimate of how many you're going to need. Or like banning, like in Georgia, banning being able to serve food or water. I think that's what it said in the Georgia law. I also didn't like that really either. But I do think we should have basic things like photo ID and stuff like that. I do support that. You know,
Yeah.
you want to make it like I can see both sides on the issue. Like you want to make it easier for people in bigger populations to vote, but you want to make it harder to cheat. So like you maybe make a security checkpoint at each ballot drop box on standby 24/7 so that way like they are monitoring the drop boxes. I think that's a pretty
Well,
smart
that's what they
idea.
did in 2020 in Georgia, but they just didn't care.
But like let's say if you don't do your job right, you get like because fraud can always slip by if nobody's watching all the time. So let's say you make it so you get a 1 year prison sentence and a $15,000 fine if you don't care, like you said.
Yeah, but how do we
I
determine
think
who's
that'd be.
watching, like, the security camera? Would
I
we,
think
like, hire people, or would it just be like how normal pollsters work? We just kind of like show up.
no, you like hire people. You hire. Okay, so let's say technically they'd be partisan, and they could always lie. I guess per se. You make it so you hire one Democrat and one Republican, just like the pollsters, but they're actual security guards. So that way, it's like there's not going to be any one side to the story. Let's say that's
How would that
again
work,
my,
like, in all the
like
precincts across the country, though?
like let's say so we don't
There
want
are
to
literally
so
hundreds, like
like
tens of thousands of precincts. Like, if you go onto like the extremely detailed map and you zoom in on like New York or Atlanta, there are literally just it is more than you can count. So how would that work in your opinion?
I
Like,
think so we set up a map. Like okay, so we don't want to really nationalize elections too much, but Congress can, let's say, set up a map and determine how many drop boxes are needed for each city, major city, or suburban area, or whatever it is. And then the government will provide the money for the security guards and the checkpoints and the drop boxes. And then so we determine how many drop boxes we need per city, maybe one to four. And obviously, there's a lot more stuff that goes into it, but that's just the basics, in my opinion.
I mean, I guess that would be good for an ideal world, but I don't see how that would work. Because if you make it so Congress has to pay for that, that's federalizing the election. Like for you said, if Congress would decide how many drop back boxes per community, how do we know Republicans just wouldn't like veto basically say, okay, no one gets a drop box, or vice versa. Democrats would put one on like every single street corner.
True. Um, that's also very much an issue. However, I think that is for an ideal world. I guess there's not really a way to really to do this without nationalizing elections and making it super hyper partisan in the world we live in. So that's kind of hard, but something like that in like if you changed it up a little bit, I don't know, or like states, or no, because then that would be hyper partisan as well. To be honest, I don't know. Like you want to make it easier to vote, but like drop boxes could be okay, but you want people who are bipartisan monitoring them, but they're not just gonna sit by and just not pay attention. Like they're actually gonna do their job.
Yeah.
That's for some reason that's very hard to accomplish in today's America. I don't know why, but that's just what it is. Um, you know, I don't really have the best solution, or like I have it. The solution is clear, but we're just never gonna get there.
It's like communism and never work in practice.
Yep.
I don't know. Is there anything else you want to really talk about? Anything else you want me to like try to convince you on? I don't really know what else to say because it seems like right now you pretty much agree with the GOP on policy. It's just some of the rhetoric you don't agree with, which I can respect to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm not against voting for a Republican based off of just rhetoric. However, they don't 100% have my vote either, I guess. That makes sense.
So you're like a swing voter, basically.
Yeah, swing. And it's
Fair enough. I'm not going to try to convince you
really?
otherwise because there's far too few swing voters nowadays. So
Yep. Also, really Democratic rhetoric as well. That's also a big part in why it's harder and harder to be accepted as a Democrat who was
because of the SJW
pro-life.
types.
Yes. And you don't really see socially conservative Democrats anymore. That's just something you don't see. Um, you know,
There's actually, I'd argue, a bunch. It's just they're not in the mainstream.
really, yeah, that's what it is. They primaried out all these
The mainstream.
socially moderate, socially conservative Democrats like Dan Lipinski and people of that nature, and then people like Joe Manchin have flip flopped, which is just weird.
Yeah, I have no clue what Joe Manchin's trying to do.
He was actually had a chance of keeping it within 15 points. Now I don't think so.
He's gonna get just absolutely blown out of the water.
Yeah, it's strange. The people who haven't flip flopped have been primaried out. The people who have, the people who haven't been primaried have flip flopped. And I don't think a party can function if you wanted to just bend to your every say. I just don't see how that's possible. You cannot have a house that's divided cannot stand, or something to an extent of that what Lincoln said.
Yep, that's
But
exactly
also,
what he said.
but also in the parties, it's if you're a Democrat, you have to just be this one thing. They're the branches are small. All the blue dog Democrats now, they're pretty liberal.
Yeah, the Blue Dog Coalition is basically just
The Blue
liberal
Dog
Democrats.
Coalition fell apart
Yeah.
massively. Really did. It's kind of
Yeah, it's a blue
sad thing
dog
to see.
coalition. All the members now are just generic Democrats, or even like further to the left than normal.
Yeah, like like if or like I guess this is also kind of applies to like Republicans as well, because or like for Democrats it's dinos, with Republicans it's rhinos. It's
I
like
think Rhino gets tossed around a lot more often,
yeah, it
but
does,
yeah,
because Democrats mostly vote in line or whatever, because like also we aren't led by like one specific person, I guess, per se, whereas the GOP is really led by Donald Trump. So that's also something that's different
well, the
as
thing is,
well,
Trump has
really.
control over the GOP base, like your average voter, but not over the party itself, which has kind of been a problem for us several times.
Yeah, like to be honest, I kind of respect people like Cheney for having the guts to go against Trump in a Trump nearly plus 50 state. Like, I don't agree with her, but I mean, that has to have some serious courage. Like, going against basically the whole state, you know, that's something pretty big, even though
But
she's going
that's
to
not what
lose
she
by
was elected
25
to
to
do.
30 points. True. And that's gonna cost her. She's gonna lose by
Yeah.
25 to 30 points.
In my opinion, if we're going to have elections, the person elected should do the will of the people they're elected to serve. And if Wyoming delivered a victory to Trump by like 40 points or something ridiculous, then Cheney shouldn't, I guess ideally, shouldn't vote against that.
You're true. But it was also kind of funny because it was also Liz Cheney. I mean, literally the spawn of Dick Cheney, the most establishmentarian Republican you will ever find,
Yeah, I know.
and the war criminal,
I actually
and
despise Dick Cheney. He should go to jail,
the dude
unironically.
who really controlled the Bush administration, honestly.
Yeah.
Because Bush was kind of just like there, like he was elected, but he didn't really like for the first term really just like let Cheney run. Is like the Iraq War, the response to 9/11. Sure. Also, I find this also pretty funny because Red Ohio elections went so far as to message J.R. Majewski to try to convince me to be a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that.
That was honestly a pretty based move.
That was actually. Didn't he like
Left.
did he convince you or did he even try?
Well, like, I mean, I don't know. He stopped. I mean, last time I messaged him was 20 hours ago.
Oh, that's
He's a
sad.
pretty busy dude. It's fine.
That's true. He is running for Congress in a swing district.
Gotta work hard. It technically should win, but it's not
Yeah.
like a normal
Nothing's guaranteed.
two-term Democratic incumbent who was elected in a blue wave. I mean, this is a woman who's been in Congress since the Reagan days.
Which is
So,
why I think he's gonna win. But that's a
you know,
winning message actually to point out how long people have been in Congress because your average person is pretty
like
pro term limits and stuff like that. So
my mom was born when Marcy Kaptur came into Congress. Okay, can you healthcare? My stance is on that. If we found a way to not crash the economy with using a single universal single payer healthcare system, I'd be all for it. Like, if there's something better than Obamacare that won't ruin the economy and make prices cheaper, then I'm all for repealing Obamacare. But like the problem I had with Trump trying to repeal Obamacare in 2017 and 2018 is that a lot of the GOP members in Congress didn't have a plan.
well, that
Like
wasn't
the
Trump's fault. That
Yeah, I
was
know.
the
I said
GOP's fault.
that's what I just said.
Oh,
There
I
was a
thought you
lot
said
of
you didn't. I thought you said you
members
didn't.
like Paul
Yeah,
Ryan.
yeah.
They
Paul
didn't
Ryan's an idiot.
they didn't have a plan. See, that's if they actually repealed Obamacare, they would have got blown out in
They would have lost
2018.
even more than they actually did. Yeah.
They could have actually lost. Democrats might have actually had a stronger chance in holding North Dakota, because even though it like states that disapproved of Obamacare, a lot of Trump voters in 2016 were on Obamacare,
That is true.
and you can't even deny that because like studies have shown, and you
Because it's
even
true.
ask the people, it's true. Oz only Democrat, but Fetterman's costing the Senate race in Pennsylvania. That's he just had his first campaign event, and what since the election campaign started because he had that stroke, and then I actually used to be on the edge about supporting Fetterman just because it was Oz, but now I support Oz.
Based. MAGA amendment gonna sweep.
Yep. The thing is, everybody thought he was dead on arrival too. See, I also don't like the people who like generally don't know anything about electoral politics, like in my comment section, but are just 10-year-olds who ultra hardcore conservatives without actually taking a look at electoral politics. Like this one dude was on my Biden v Trump video. He's like, I think Trump gets 400 electoral votes at the least. He's like, I'm like, do you have any data to back you up? He's like, I think Biden has a 90% disapproval rating. And I'm like, all right, can you send me the source for that? And he's like, are you a Biden supporter? I'm like, no. And it was strange
I think
because
for Trump to get more than 400 electoral votes, he'd have to basically win. He'd have to flip a bunch of states. Let's just put it
he'd
at
have
that.
to he'd have to win like theoretically now we are much more polarized than when was the last time somebody got that much?
Maybe
Bush
maybe
88.
Bush. Yeah, Bush 88.
Bush 88. And he won 53%. But we're so much more polarized than that, and he only won because Reagan was super popular. Because he was considered as a weak candidate. But he was vice president of a very popular nation. All the polls show, well, like the polls really aren't accurate, though.
They used to be, at least to an
That's the
extent.
thing. The Rust Belt polls suck. Like, okay, some certain state polls are good. Like, Virginia polls are all right. Georgia polls are actually really good. But Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania polls suck.
Because they always underestimate how many white working class voters are going to turn out.
Probably have to win.
That's the big issue.
Illinois is going to be a target within the next 10 to 20 years. California is going to keep going left. New York is barely shifting to the right. And that's only because, for some reason, New York City shifted to the right when the rest of the state shifted to the left.
It was mostly because of the Hispanics and also just
Yeah.
kind of.
It's like, if you want, it's like college educated Hispanics after like 2020, they just aren't going to really, okay, maybe 2024, but like, they aren't really going to shift to the right. Like, college educated voters, no matter what the race, are heavily Democratic. Now, white work,
And they're going to keep getting more and more
working class
Democratic.
working class voters is really what you want to go for if you're trying to flip a demographic group like Asians or Hispanics. Like blacks, I really don't see feasible right now. They're 90 to 10 for the Democrats.
I think eventually we may see Southern conservative blacks vote vote Republican, but I think that's pretty far down the line.
A lot of them are really, I'm telling you, as somebody whose family are Southern blacks, they are really socially conservative, but they're really economically liberal. Like, they're against a lot of stuff like gay marriage, anti-woke pretty much.
Yeah.
But they're the ancestral Democrats that have still stayed with the Democrats. Really what they are. Also, these shifts are going to carry into 2022 because now Democrats are even more unpopular than before. It's really messaging. It's like messaging screwed over Biden in Florida. To be honest, had Trump not made that communist play, Biden could have won Florida. I'm going to say that in all honesty. Had he gotten Clinton margins in South Florida, he would have won Florida. But due to fear mongering from Democrats fear monger so much.
They're
It's
calling
not.
us communists now.
It's really Biden was never close to Florida. Yeah, the polls that had him up by 6, that was BS. But however, Trump making that communist play really helped him. I mean, Biden got 7,000 more votes than Hillary Clinton, I think, in Miami-Dade County. Trump got 200,000 more votes than he did in 2016, and that's why he won by 400,000 votes, because the rules also turned out for him, and Biden barely shifted back Tampa and Jacksonville and Orlando. Florida will stay red. Yeah, Florida's red. At best, I can see Democrats winning the popular vote. Now, if you think about it, it depends on how much Democrats won the popular vote by. Because the thing is, on the old map, even if they won it by 10, at best they'd get a 1-seat majority in the House on the old maps. Now, if you give them a 10-point margin victory in the popular vote, they'd get upwards of 270 seats because redistricting didn't screw them over as bad. Like, there was Texas, Florida, Ohio to an extent, maybe, I don't know. But they're going to redraw that one. North Carolina, they're going to redraw. And they struck down the Hochelander in New York. But other than that, it was not that bad. But the thing is, when you draw more favorable districts for your party, it creates more radicalism. Like New York City and Minneapolis, and funny thing is, Ilhan Omar almost got primary too. So I find that really funny. It's like New York City and north of Georgia are the reasons why AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene exist. Because to be honest, both of them would never survive in a swing district. But they're so radical, and like for both parties in AOC's district and Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, they're both so radical. It's just they'll never get voted out. The only chance they have is through a primary. But even then, that's pretty unfeasible, Chairman. Or this report, I feel like whoever benefits from the Electoral College is going to say, don't ban the Electoral College. That's also a thing. Like, Republicans, in 2000, 2004, probably thanking the Electoral College that they won. Otherwise, if we went based off popular vote, all Democrats had to do was campaign in LA and New York, and they won. Although 2000,
which is why the popular vote is based. The Electoral College is based.
Oh, Buckeye missed the popular vote is based.
I love the popular vote.
Yep.
I love democracy.
That's like, but even then in 2004, I guess it wasn't as much of an issue because Bush still would have won had it been based off the popular vote. But still, New York, I don't know. Lee Zeldin's not going to win New York, and it's a red wave. Probably like R+5. Also, people, okay, so we can end it in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think we pretty much came to a conclusion. I don't know if I really convinced you of anything, but I hope I at least gave you some stuff to think about, and we had a good
You definitely convinced me a little bit more now that I think about it.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. It was good talking to you. You're one of the few people on ET and Election YouTube that you can have a sensible conversation with. So that's good. It's always fun to have that.
I've heard that from a lot of people before, which is a good thing.
It is a very good thing, yeah.
North Carolina, but it's because, okay, so basically gerrymandering really took power in 2010s for some reason, I don't know why it didn't take place before that. I guess because
Congressional maps used to basically just be counties and population centers. There really wasn't any politics to it. It was just like demographic and geographic areas. They basically would just draw counties and call it a day.
yeah. Also, one thing like for I remember, so we were on the stream, me, GLP, Lone Star, and a few other people were on the stream, and then a Wyatt Tomlin troll came in. It was Wyatt Tomlin, but he was pretending to be a Republican instead, and he put New York as till R, and then it's like, and then also I was premiering my governor's video, and then so I called Kathy Hochul at poll closing times because it's New York and why not? And then this one dude is like, well, Virginia went red, New York's gonna go red. And then again, that's first thing. If Youngkin won by 2, he would get blown out in a D plus in a state that's 15 points more Democratic than Virginia. That's first thing. Second thing, Zeldin, I mean, he's better than Andrew Giuliani, I guess. Because the
Giuliani had no chance.
Giuliani fell off after his time as mayor from 1994 to 2001. I mean, I guess really after 2016 when he was involved in a lot of controversy. It's like Zeldin, even if Zeldin won 100% of the Nassau County and Suffolk County vote, he wouldn't make it within 10, I don't think.
I think he's going to get it within 15, but not within 10.
People keep saying he's going to be more than 10. It's New York. And plus New York isn't like, it's kind of like, it has a lot of split ticketing. It has like 20 points worth of split ticketing when Schumer's on the ballot. It's not going to split. Schumer's going to win by like 50 points.
No.
Somehow. He always
doubt
does. Somewhere around there, 40, 30, 40, 45. It's like they don't, like Kathy Hochul isn't that unlike that's going to be under 10. Like, I guess she's unpopular, but she's not.
I don't think
like,
it's going to be under 10. I think it's going to be under 15.
It's going to be under 15. It's going to be under 15 pretty much because of the year, really. Democrats just aren't energized in New York City. Really, it's like you have an unpopular president, an unpopular governor, but it's like you're a Democrat, and it's like if you see an R next to their name, you're not voting for them.
It's your average, a progressive voter.
Really, and it's like,
I wonder how well Strom Thurmond would do in like inner city LA, and like
Strom Thurmond. To be honest, a lot of these segregationists were actually based except for segregation. It's really
that's true.
It is. Like, I would have voted for,
it is true.
Like, Wallace was based except for segregation.
And he eventually came around.
Yeah, he did. It was like strange because the last term he served as Alabama governor. He wasn't like full on racist.
Yeah.
All right, I think feel free to end the stream here.
All right, thanks you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. We'll be back with a video tomorrow, maybe a live stream. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you for Left Right for coming on. I really enjoyed talking to you, so I'm glad we did this. I'll link his channel in the pinned comment if you want to go subscribe. So yeah, once again, thanks for watching.
Thanks.